statements he's made over the course of his career, he often couches his political discussion of Israel in religious terms. When I was writing this profile, I actually found an old quote of his back from the early 2000s that he gave to a congressional newspaper in Washington, D.C., where he said that his support for Israel was a matter of faith for him. It was actually a manifestation of his personal faith, and then even went so far as to quote from the Bible to justify his position on Israel. So it is clear that this has been an important issue for him, but he's always seen it in religious terms rather than geopolitical terms or diplomatic terms.
Well, also in your piece, you say that overall, the vice president has been deferential to President Trump. You write that Mike Pence believes in, quote, servant leadership. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, this is a term that was explained to me by Mark Short, who's a longtime Pence advisor who now works in the White House, and he's also a fellow Christian. What he said is that, a lot of people will look at Pence's kind of performative deference to Donald Trump and his steadfast loyalty and his willingness to even go on TV and kind of defend Trump at all costs and in all situations. And a lot of people will scratch their heads and kind of say, how does he reconcile this with his Christian ideals? What Mark Short tells me is that this is actually something that Pence has thought a lot about. He sees himself as a servant leader. That's an evangelical term for a biblical concept where basically he believes that to be an effective leader, he has to be serving someone. That when he was in Congress, he saw himself as serving primarily his constituents. When he was in GOP House leadership, he was serving his fellow GOP lawmakers. And when he agreed to be Donald Trump's running mate in the 2016 election, and since then, he believed he was basically signing on to submit himself to the will of Donald Trump. Now, this is obviously a controversial take on servant leadership. I've spoken with a lot of evangelical Christians who disagree with this application of the principle, but it is how Mike Pence thinks of himself and his relationship with Trump and how he reconciles some of the things he has to do and say as part of this administration.
Well, do you think that we can expect to see more of that servant leadership during this trip?
I would expect so. The one thing that we've taken, we should have learned about Mike Pence in his first year as vice president is that he is probably the most on-script political leader in this administration. He never shows any daylight between himself and Trump. He never even hints at it, really. And I imagine that when he's out there in the Middle East, doing these visits, making comments publicly, he is going to, do everything he can to show himself as the good, loyal soldier in Trump's army that he is.
And what about that concept of loyalty, McKay? Does the White House believe that he is inherently loyal to the president?
Well, this is the interesting contradiction here. While Pence kind of goes out of his way to perform his loyalty and submission and deference to Trump, some people in Trump's orbit that I've talked to do question just how far that loyalty will extend. I write in this profile about a moment during the campaign, late in the presidential campaign, right after the Access Hollywood tape came out, when I'm told by sources familiar with the situation that Pence actually privately made clear to the RNC, the Republican, that he was ready to take Trump's place at the top of the ticket. And so some people point to that, who are close to Trump, loyal to Trump, they point to that episode and say, Pence may be loyal now when it's in his political interest to be that way, but they question if there will come a moment when, Pence decides it's in his political interest to throw Trump under the bus. And a lot of people in Trump's orbit are nervous about that.
So that's some interesting context. You spoke also with people who know Mike Pence and talked about how he balances his personal values with his professional ambition. Is this trip an opportunity for him to flex or highlight that ambition?
Well, absolutely. I mean, look, this is a man who I'm told by people who've known him for a long time that ever since he was basically a teenager, he's wanted to be president of the United States. And so, these kinds of foreign trips, especially this trip, is an opportunity for Pence to kind of play that role for a little while, to be meeting with world leaders, go to these very geopolitically important countries, and kind of play the part of commander-in-chief for a few days. And certainly I think that his political advisors, if they were being completely honest, would say that that's one of the goals of this trip. They want him to look like a president, come off like a leader, and burnish his credentials for a future presidential run.
How closely do you think the evangelical community will be watching this particular trip?
Well, I can tell you that conservative evangelicals are already ecstatic with the decision that was announced last month about moving the embassy to Jerusalem. So I think they'll be watching. Pence has shown himself to be very skilled at, giving the lines, saying the lines that are given to him while also, kind of winking at evangelicals and working in rhetoric and ideas that he knows will make those supporters happy, those conservative Christian supporters happy. And I imagine he'll find opportunities to do that on this trip. During the campaign, he talked about being a champion of persecuted Christians in the Middle East. And I assume we'll hear some of that on this trip, and certainly conservative Christians here in America will be happy to hear it.
A moment ago, you talked about this trip being an opportunity for the vice president to come across as looking the part of a commander-in-chief. How closely will the actual commander-in-chief, you think, be paying attention to this? And is there a risk in perhaps shining a little too brightly, perhaps?
That is something that I know for a fact that Pence and his team are always nervous about. This is a president who is especially kind of attuned to media coverage of his administration, and he never wants anybody in his inner circle to get more credit or attention than he gets. One of the ways that Pence, I've noticed, kind of gets around that is even in these moments where he's in the spotlight, he always finds opportunities to kind of work in compliments for the president, to pay tribute to the president. Every vice president does this to some extent. Pence, I think, does it with a special fervor. He's very affectionate and loving in the way that he talks about the president, and I think we'll probably see a lot of that also while he's overseas.
It'll be fascinating to watch this trip. McKay Coppins in Washington. McKay, thanks very much for your insight. Appreciate it. Here's a look at some of the headlines you'll be talking about on Friday. USA Today reports the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia has dropped charges against 129 protesters who were arrested on President Trump's Inauguration Day. Prosecutors made the decision Thursday after the first 6 defendants to stand trial were found not guilty. The government said it plans to focus on charges against a small group believed to be responsible for the protests. While most of the demonstrations that day were peaceful, police arrested more than 200 people for various offenses. The Associated Press reports President Trump's pick to head NASA plans to bring Bill Nye the Science Guy to the State of the Union address. Oklahoma Congressman Jim Bridenstine has faced tough Senate confirmation hearings over past comments dismissing man-made causes for climate change. Now he is pointing to his relationship with Nye as he seeks confirmation. Nye is normally quick to call out climate change deniers. He said in a statement through Bridenstine's office that he has enjoyed a productive working relationship with the congressman. NJ.com reports former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie had a harsh welcome back to life as a private citizen Thursday. 2 days after leaving office, Christie and his security detail were turned away from a special access area at Newark Airport that skips TSA security. Christie was then reportedly escorted to the regular screening line for all passengers without objection. After the story was widely reported, Christie tweeted, "Absolutely false story about my travel today." Christie went on to describe what happened and blamed miscommunication between his security detail and the TSA. He finally concluded that the story was, quote, pure fiction. And a quick programming note, Sunday is John Dickerson's final time moderating Face the Nation. He'll speak with White House Budget Director Mick Mulvaney about the debate over government funding. He'll also speak with Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein about that debate, the Russia investigation, and more. You can watch this Sunday at 11 a.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern right here on CBSN. Well, that does it for this edition of Red and Blue. We'll see you here on Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern. More news after the break. You're watching CBSN. Hospitals across the country are trying to keep up with the deadly flu season. Every state except Hawaii has reported widespread flu activity. Dean Reynolds is in St. Louis, Missouri, where more than 40,000 cases have been reported.
I'll be swabbing you for flu. Have you ever done this before?
No.
Chloe Tennant came to Total Access Urgent Care in St. Louis complaining of flu-like symptoms. 15 minutes later, after a battery of tests, Dr. Paul Hinrichs delivered the bad news.
So your influenza A is positive.
How are you?
It's a common diagnosis these days across Missouri and across the country.
I've been doing this a long time, and I have never seen such a high concentration of flu cases all at one time.
At this clinic, they've been seeing 1,000 hacking, sneezing, feverish patients a day, twice the usual amount.
1 minute you feel okay, the next minute or hour you have acute onset of fever, can be as high as 103, 104 sometimes.
There you go.
At St. Louis Children's Hospital, they take no chances with visitors. We were outfitted with an isolation gown, protective gloves, and a mask before talking to 6-year-old Daniel Harris, whose temperature had spiked to 103 degrees.
So, Daniel, how do you feel?
Not well.
Daniel, who also has cerebral palsy, has had the flu for 8 days, and his parents brought him here last night after he suffered a seizure. His mother, Ruth, was at his bedside.
What did we say?
It's the pits.
Right. The flu is the pits.
Yep. No fun.
The combination of holiday travel and kids returning to school created something of a breeding ground for this flu outbreak. And doctors here in Missouri are concerned that they may be in for 10 more very rough days before it subsides. Elaine?
Dean Reynolds, thank you. People across the South are shoveling and plowing themselves out after a winter storm brought the region to a standstill. The weather is being blamed for at least 15 deaths. Authorities in many parts of the South are urging drivers to stay off the roads. Several of Louisiana's major highways remain closed. Airlines canceled flights across the region, and utility companies report thousands of power outages. In Climate Watch, NASA announced Thursday that Earth's global surface temperatures in 2017 were the second warmest since 1880. 2017's average global temperature was nearly 2 degrees warmer than the average from 1951 to 1980. That ranks second only to global temperatures in 2016, and there was no El Nino event last year to cause a spike in temperature. Gavin Schmidt is the director of NASA's Goddard for Space Studies, and he joins me now. Welcome to you, Gavin.
Thank you very much.
So what is causing global temperatures to rise, especially in the last few years?
So every year it's a little bit different. You can have things like El Nino events, like you mentioned before, that can give us a little bit of a boost, and La Nina, which can bring us down a little bit. But really, we're talking about the long-term trends. Mm-hmm. The long-term trends, this 2 degrees warming that we've seen actually since the 19th century, that's mainly due to greenhouse gases and man's effect on the climate. Not just carbon dioxide, but methane and nitrous oxides and aerosols and pollution. All of those things are adding up to a warmer climate.
So 2016 and 2017 have been two of the hottest years on record.
Yep.
But is this new, a trend that we're just seeing now, or something that we've steadily been watching here over the decades?
So we've been looking at these trends since the 1980s, and we've been predicting that the planet would continue to warm, and indeed it has. When we first started talking about this in 1988, that was the warmest year on record. Now that's not even in the top 20. So the trends that we're seeing are continuous. Like, they're not every year, we're not seeing a record every single year, but what's happening right now is both unexpected, unfortunately, and a harbinger of things to come.
Yeah, that graphic that we had on the screen a moment ago really seems to tell the long-term story when you look at the extended period of time. Well, where are we seeing the strongest warming trends?
So we see most of the warming on land as opposed to on the ocean. The ocean is warming up a little bit slower, but the northern hemisphere, where we're living right now, is warming faster than the south because there's more ocean in the south. It takes longer to warm up. And the Arctic is warming fastest of all. And so we're seeing big changes in sea ice, in melting rates in Greenland, in permafrost melt, erosion along the coastlines, increases in sea level. All of those things are associated with that increased warming pattern in the Arctic.
So those are the implications of that. Those effects they have a tremendous consequence for the globe as a whole.
Right, and we're feeling those effects right now. We're seeing it in increased intensity of rainfall. We're seeing it in increased statistics of heat waves. We're seeing it when we have big storms, that we're seeing more intense rainfall. And there are a lot of other things that are going along with that. Changes in pine bark beetles in the west, changes in wildfire regimes, changes in pests and yields in crops.
So these rising temperatures then that we've been seeing, are they an indicator that those severe weather events that we've been seeing, the increase in intensity of hurricanes, of wildfires, that those could be more frequent perhaps?
So that's really cutting edge science. So
we're not sure.
But the indication is that we should be seeing more intense storm activity in tropical cyclones, and that means that you're going to get more Category 4, 5s than we used to. But those are rare events, so it's not something that's suddenly going to happen every week. But we do expect that flood and intense rainfall that's associated with flooding, those should be increasing, and in fact that's being borne out in the data already.
So people are wondering what needs to be done to reverse the trend or at least slow it down.
So we're not going to be able to reverse the trend, but we're continuing to accelerate that trend by continuing to burn fossil fuels, mainly oil, coal, natural gas, and deforestation. If we can slow those effects down, we can slow global warming to come, and we can avoid some of the worst case scenarios, which really are much, much warmer by the end of the century.
All right, Gavin Schmidt from NASA's Goddard Institute. Thank you so much for that explanation, Gavin. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
More than a week after the deadly mudslides in Southern California, the recovery is just beginning. Crews are working to clear thousands of tons of mud and debris from the Montecito area. The mudslides and floods killed at least 20 people and damaged or destroyed hundreds of homes. Jamie Yukas has more on the cleanup.
Mud, cars, and remnants of 100-year-old trees now fill 11 debris fields in Montecito.
This debris flow was over 1,000 feet wide.
So 3 football fields worth of debris came slamming in.
Tom Thayrum is in charge of clearing all this out. He says each of these rocks weighs up to 5 tons. The mudslide was so large it changed the elevation in some neighborhoods by as much as 6 feet.
Our main job is to race to open up every creek channel, get every bridge unplugged, because we will get rain, and so we have to be ready for it.
The same massive cleanup effort is happening along Highway 101, where trucks are hauling away thousands of pounds of debris every day.
More than 20 million pounds have been dumped here at the Ventura County Fairgrounds. Rocks, trees, plastics, and metals are sorted out and then taken to either a recycling center or a landfill.
The county is having to dump some cleaned mud at the beach. It's all a race against the clock until the next storm.
It was just a little village in the forest, and it was beautiful.
This is Mary Beth Meyer's cottage before the mudslide. Now, this is all you see. She lost 12 of her 24 neighbors on her street.
No one lived through that storm that was on my street. They're just gone. Or we're lucky enough not to be there like I was.
Fighting a cold, she spent the frigid night at her office with her dogs because it has better heat.
I'm not sure why I'm still here, but I know one thing, I'm really grateful.
As you can see, the cleanup is far from over, and the rainy season is just beginning here in California. Elaine, that means any new storm could send crews all the way back to square one.
Jamie, thank you. Amazon has narrowed the list of cities it's considering for its second headquarters. The list is now down to 20. Some of the cities include Atlanta, Chicago, and Toronto. Mayors and governors from the different regions are eagerly vying for Amazon's attention as the company promises to invest $5 billion in investments and bring 50,000 jobs to the city